It is always game day in Cleveland. He is Daryl Ryder. I'm Andy Baskin. We're brought to you locally by Smiley One and Bryant, Northeast Ohio's premier heating and cooling solution. Daryl, we've had a weekend to kind of chill out, get a little bit closer to the draft. Last week, we had a chance to hear from Andrew Berry. We had a chance to hear from Kevin Stefanski. So things going on. It feels slow right now just a little bit, but those things are about to pick up real quick with the draft coming up on Thursday night.
Yeah, it might be slow for us, but it's not slow for Andrew Berry as he's going through the final couple of days here of preparation. Of course, the Browns don't have a first-round pick for the third straight year. We'll see. They do have a second-round pick, but they haven't used one in the last couple of years. They have made multiple trades there with those second-round picks in recent years. So we'll see if they actually stay at 54. That's a bit of a mystery. Of course, they also have a third-round pick. And the worst thing that a GM could ever do to anybody that covers the NFL, including yours truly, and that is acquire additional seventh-round picks. So as it stands right now, Andrew Berry has lost my Executive of the Year vote.
Oh, no.
He traded for a seventh-round pick. As he said last week, he views it as a resource to do what with, I don't know. Hopefully it's to package both of them and trade back up into the sixth round. But we do not do seventh round picks here on It's Always Game Day in Cleveland. It is absolutely unacceptable at the NFL executive level to spend seventh round picks on actual players.
Are you done? Are you done? Come on. You know he picked up that second seventh-round pick to kind of come back up and get a six.
Well, I hope so.
We'll dump both the sevens and then get another six. He has been pretty good at picking up extra picks in the second, third, and fourth round. So,
yeah, you're not.
It's been interesting to watch him.
Sevens, though, Andy.
No, but you could take your 2 7s and your 6 and maybe get in the fourth, or maybe 2 7s, 6, and 5th, get in the fourth, call it a 3-pick draft, and get out of there. How's that sound to you?
This is not a volume pick draft for the Browns. They come in with 6, but they don't have a lot of roster spots available.
No.
That's the other kind of component going into this is they're starting 11 on both sides of the ball pretty much set, right? Most of the reserve spots, the second and third string spots, pretty much spoken for, both sides of the ball. So there's not a lot of wiggle room within this roster right now where they need an infusion of talent. Yeah, there are some spots, especially defensive tackle, where they need some youth because they have veterans on short-term contracts. Tight end is another spot where I think they could use a little extra help. I know you and Jeff Phelps love talking about wide receivers on the midday show, but
I'm more of a tight end guy, but Jeff is definitely all about.
Yeah, I think tight end is where they need to go this year, more importantly than wide receiver, because again, you've got David Bell and you've got Cedric Tillman, who you've drafted in the last couple of years. They're in the third round, and you need room for both of those players to develop. So my take on this upcoming draft for the Browns is their first 2 picks in rounds 2 and 3. Yeah, those might be role players for them, but these are not going to be starters because they don't need them, at least right now, as we talk right now, right? And then the rest of them are practice squad developmental guys. And Andrew Berry said it himself last week, and we'll get into this in our next podcast later this week, but he's looking at a large segment of this upcoming draft, not so much to help the 2024 Cleveland Browns, but to help the 2025, 26, 27, and into the future Browns teams.
Daryl, do you think that tight end is a place where they could draft? I mean, you've got Njoku. You talked about Jordan Akins. They also have Giovanni Ricci. Is that it? How you say it? Or Ricky.
Works for me.
The guy they picked up from Carolina. And then Zaire Mitchell-Payton, who we've seen a little bit of. Yeah, so I mean, they do have 4, but I wouldn't be surprised if they, it's one thing I really haven't thought a whole lot about. I did read a little bit about Cade Stover. Scott Petrick had a pretty good story about him earlier this week. I like him at Ohio State. I'm just not, the draft is so weird this year because we're just there. There is no, hey, we need to draft somebody to fill this spot today. And I haven't really thought about tight end.
Yeah, and that's the nice part of where the Browns are at in the team building process, or I should say the roster building process. They don't have to draft for specific needs. And that gives, in my view, Andrew Berry a lot of latitude in his player selection when he goes on the clock, whenever that ultimately is, on Friday night, and then obviously multiple times throughout the afternoon on Saturday. You're not going into this draft saying, I have to fill this particular spot. Because again, your top, I would say 45, your top 40 to 45 on this roster are set. You feel really, really good about that, which means there not a lot of room, right? And so when you're talking about drafting 5th, 6th, and 7th round players, those are going to be practice squad guys. Now, if you have a DeJuan Jones situation, right? They drafted DeJuan, I think it was in the 4th round last year. Injuries forced him onto the field. We've talked extensively about how he basically needed oxygen during rookie minicamp in between each and every rep that he took. And then by the time he got to training camp, he was a completely different player. Credit to Bill Callahan, who's now with his son in Tennessee with the Titans there. But, he kind of came out of nowhere. He was the quintessential draft and develop to potentially take over at some point for Jedrick Wills or Jack Conklin at one of those tackle spots. And then lo and behold, he shows when Conklin goes down, he's ready to start in the NFL. And in fact, he was the best rookie tackle in the league when it came to limiting pressures and allowing sacks and things. I don't think he allowed a sack. And he only allowed a handful of pressures. So they're open to guys that surprise them. And as Berry talked about last week, they're not going to be shy about putting those guys on the field. But, Andrew had one of the funnier quotes that it kind of twisted and turned into like what happened to the Browns last year. But he was talking about last week, asked, I should say, about surprises in the NFL. And you got to listen to what he had to say about that.
The NFL is full of surprises. I think you guys hear me say this every year, that you really get surprised in both directions every year. I mean, okay, this is maybe not roster, but let's say a year ago at this time, if I was up here in my pre-draft presser and I said, all right, I've been to the future, and when we get to the Super Bowl, you're going to have Brittany Mahomes, Taylor Swift, Ice Spice, and Jason Kelsey all in the same suite watching the Super Bowl. You guys would have looked at me like I had 5 heads, right? So you just, it's always full of surprises, and it's really the same thing with players, right? I don't think any of us anticipated going to the season and we would be down, 3 tackles, Nick Chubb and Deshaun Watson for most of the year. That we would lose, Grant Delpit and Juan Thornhill and Rodney Cloud, late in the season. So in terms of spots on the 53 or who's going to play what, like, it all looks good in May until adversity hits or something unexpected happens, whether it's injury or performance. Probably more generally, as we think of the current roster relative to the draft has always been about long-term investment in the roster. We don't think of it as, I talked earlier on how rare it is for a player to come in immediately and play at a starting caliber level. We really look at it with, okay, how are these players going to impact, call it the 25 to 27, Cleveland Browns. And if they develop quickly and produce with impact in their rookie season, that's great. We're not going to, DeJuan Jones did that. We're not going to keep them off the field. But we really do look at it as in terms of a long-term investment in the team.
So look at Andrew Berry being all hip to like modern culture, and believe it or not, he doesn't have his face buried in scouting reports 24/7, 365. But he is right. I mean, just a lot of bizarre stuff happened last season, not only to the Browns, but just in the the big picture of the NFL, the unpredictability of the NFL, and those are things that going into this draft where he's trying to insulate himself as much as possible and insulate the roster as much as possible for some of those unpredictable moments that are destined to occur.
All right, we have a lot more to go here on It's Always Game Day in Cleveland. I want to talk to you specifically about the draft as a whole, beyond the Browns. So we'll get into that. I want to talk about the Greg Newsome rumors, because there was stuff about that during the offseason while we were on hiatus. So all these things straight ahead on It's Always Game Day in Cleveland. It is always game day in Cleveland. He's Daryl Ryder. I'm Andy Baskin. We're brought to you locally by Smiley One and Bryant, Northeast Ohio's premier heating and cooling solution. All right, again, we were talking about some of the things that Andrew Berry had to say last week, Daryl, and there were as solid as this roster is. The draft could change some things if they decided they wanted to trade someone on draft night. But more than that, there were some rumors in the offseason about one player in particular who could be traded, or they maybe, just figure out a different path for him.
Yeah, I mean, Greg Newsome is in the final year of his rookie deal, per se. They do have the 5th-year option on him. They have until May 2nd to pick that up. Right now, it's going to pay around $13+ million and change. Should they pick it up and it becomes obviously guaranteed if they do. Andrew Berry would not say whether or not they would actually do that, but here is what Berry had to say about those trade rumors and speculations surrounding the Browns' young corner.
Your base offense and defense is really more 3 receivers and 3 corners in this day and age. So that's really how we think about it. Like, even though we're technically a 4-3, how many snaps will you realistically see us play in base? Not very many over the course of the season. So corner is a premium position. We have 3 guys who can play press man coverage at a very, very, very high level. That's not a skill set that I'm looking to give away.
Looking to extend him then?
I won't touch on contracts, Daryl, as you know.
So, yeah, I mean, Berry wouldn't answer the question if they're going to extend him or pick up that option. He went back.
Did you expect him to, though? I didn't.
No, but you have to ask the question. For the fans that say, "Oh, Daryl, that's a real dumb question to ask him," you have to get him on the record like that. I mean, and that was the perfect opportunity to follow up with Andrew on that, because, hey, if you're going to sit there and you're going to speak glowingly, about a player that you have to make a decision on, right, as far as the big picture in the future, well, then the natural question is, okay, what are you going to do to keep him on this roster in a long-term fashion? So I don't know if they're going to pick up the option. Usually we have, in years past, Andy, we've had a very good indication what they're going to do there, right? Have no idea what they're going to do with Greg Newsome. I really don't. Obviously, the speculation that was out there, one guy that does not want to see Greg Newsome go anywhere, it's his teammate Denzel Ward, and Ward spoke about the Newsome situation last week as well.
I feel we're the best corner group in the NFL. I feel that we went out there and showed that, but this is a new year and we got to go out there and show that again. So, that's what we're doing now, putting that work in to go out and show why we're the best group, and so that's all it is. It's just getting to the work and then going out there and showing that. But I definitely feel we're the best, though. I want to keep us together. I feel like you can, even AB says all the time, you can never have enough great corners and enough corners on a team. And that's real. Guys go down, and just having the ability to be able to match up with any teams across the board, whether that's inside in the slot with Greg or outside with me and Martin, and being able to rotate and do different things, and having multiple number 1 corners on the team. So we're definitely in an ideal situation position. And those guys did a great job of drafting all of us and getting us all here. But like I said, we just got to continue to go out and show that we're number 1, though. Greg's in the building now working, so I think so. But I don't know all the behind the scenes stuff. But we're all in the building now working towards the same goal and trying to be the best.
So, yeah, there you go. Denzel Ward, he wants to keep that core cornerback group together. He feels that they're among the best in the NFL. We heard from Andrew Berry expressing those very same sentiments. And when you look at what they did last season, Andy, finishing with the number 1 ranked overall defense, they were very good defending the pass during the regular season as well, setting aside that playoff game and the blowout loss to the Houston Texans. But the bottom line is, Denzel Ward, MJ Emerson, Greg Newsome, that is a very nice trio to have back there. And when you hear Berry say that they're not interested in, or they realize that pretty much you're playing 3 corners most of your defensive snaps there, and good corners are hard to find, and you don't want to give that away. It does sound like on the surface right now that they do want to keep Greg Newsome. And obviously Denzel Ward clearly has his fingers crossed that in fact that is what's going to happen.
Well, Ward seems like an old man out there right now compared to, I'm not saying he is, but when you look at the influence he should have, a first rounder in 18 compared to the other guys that are in the defensive backfield. So, and it's hard not to look at the Browns defensive backs and go Ward, Delpit, Thornhill, Emerson, MJ, and then Newsome to not feel strong about them. But the Browns do have a mission, right? I mean, they've got to get to the playoffs and not give up 45 points in that first playoff game. So, I mean, there are things that have to change. I don't know that that's the place where I'm looking for them to change. What do you think about the depth in the defensive secondary and if that will affect the draft? Because, you want to just quickly kind of glance at what they have in there. Khalif Falassi, D'Anthony Bell, Rodney McLeod, Justin Hardy, who they just picked up, Cameron Mitchell, Ronnie Hickman. I mean, just give me a base feeling on how they feel about their depth in the defensive secondary.
Yeah, I mean, and that is, again, where do you fit the young player in, right? They've got a couple of young guys in there, but, let's not forget Rodney McLeod at safety, who played really well last year. D'Anthony Bell, they are really high on him. Yeah, I mean, corner is a place where you could find a practice squad type guy that you can elevate for game day if you need them. And again, that's why I kind of feel like that you put yourself in a position, like if you do trade Greg Newsome, yeah, you could, I don't know what you get. Maybe you get a 3. Could you maybe get a 2 for him? But I feel like that if you trade him, you open a hole that you don't currently have. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like you create a problem more so than you solve it. And
it's a great thing. Why would you? Okay, we're going to let a little bit of water in the dam because we know we might be able to get some really cool silly putty or something to put in there so it'll blow up into it. But why would you want to cause a problem? I agree with you wholeheartedly on that.
Here's what you have to understand too. The Browns have 8 draft picks next year, including, I want to say, their first 4 rounds or 5 rounds. And then like they're I think the 5th, 6th, or 7th, they recouped picks that they had previously traded. So they ended up with 8 total picks for next year's draft. And so I think next year is the draft where it's important for them to fill holes with guys, young guys that can step on the field and start and help out the existing veterans. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. This isn't the draft for that. And the Browns are not in an asset acquisition mode. They're spending assets so they can get players. I mean, just look what they've done the last couple of years. They traded their 2nd round pick for Elijah Moore in the 23 offseason, right? Mm-hmm. This year they acquire, Jerry Jeudy. They don't give up a lot to get him, but they do get him. Berry's not afraid to make trades because he's not holding on to picks. Like the picks are now no longer the sacred cows that they used to be in the NFL.
Although bringing back Cade York kind of felt that way, but I agree with you. Like 99.9%. I mean, like I think they went back to Cade York because they were like, we still believe in him. And
they brought back Cade York because you need 2 kickers. They always carry 2 kickers in the offseason. Like I don't think I don't think that has any reflection on.
Well, no, I mean, but you got to believe that they believed in him when they drafted him. So why wouldn't they believe him if they had the chance to bring him back? That's all.
Yeah,
and they did.
I don't think that signing him is any threat to Hopkins whatsoever. Hopkins was incredible last year, and
unless they think his injury is worse than.
Well, you was just getting to that. What York gives you is she gives you insurance through training camp, and then who's to say if you cut him, put him on waivers, and can you get him through waivers back onto the practice squad so you can continue to carry that second kicker through the season? That's just kind of part of the roster manipulation game that Berry's going to have to play. But I like that they brought back Cade York. That's as I like to call it, gravy in the bowl, and some insurance. But I don't think it has any reflection on Hopkins' situation.
Okay, more to come on It's Always Game Day in Cleveland. We're talking about the new kickoff rule, and we'll take a deeper dive into the NFL and the draft. It's all straight ahead on It's Always Game Day in Cleveland.
Truth is, none of us will really know until we get into it. I mean, We've watched a ton of XFL film, even though it's not the same design. We've had a lot. I think Kevin mentioned earlier, earlier this week, how much time they've put into it. I think the style of returner will change ever so slightly. I think the blocking schemes that you see on kick return will be different, and I think the body type for kickoff coverage players is going to potentially change pretty significantly, because you're taking a lot of speed and space, out of the traditional play. And I think you're going to probably see bigger body types, guys that are really good with their hands and that can, I would say, traditionally get off blocks, as opposed to maybe use their speed and quickness to avoid a block, just because of the setup rules. But I'd say that's maybe more of a working hypothesis than let's say a stated fact. And I'm sure we're going to learn a lot as we get into the preseason and then the regular season with the new rule.
Yeah, like a lot of us, Andrew, Berry included, we're trying to figure it out. What's this new kickoff rule going to look like? What are the players going to look like? They could be a little bit different, a little bit beefier. He's Daryl Ryder. I'm Andy Baskin. I don't know if that was the right thing to say, but we'll figure it out. Brought to you locally by Smiley One and Bryant, Northeast Ohio's premier heating and cooling solution. So when I say beefier, it's not like you don't need secondary guys who can fly down the field to make a tackle now, because you don't have to go more than 10 yards to make a tackle. So would you tend to go to your backup offensive lineman on special teams in this scenario? I really think, and I've said this before, that I think this new kickoff rule is going to give us some 60, 70-yard runs that are going to be simply awesome, because the kick returners now only have one or two to beat in a real small area. And it changes the whole dynamic of the kickoff to, if they can find that hole, get there quick, or find somebody who on your team offensively can make one big block, it's nothing but you in the end zone for a touchdown. I'm excited about this. I think it's going to add, I think it might add a little too much offense. I could be wrong when it's all said and done, but I think it's going to add offense that we're not used to seeing. Guys that are going to have to run 50, 60 yards, 70 yards to go get a touchdown now. It could be fun. Could be fun.
Yeah, they're going to have, it's two returners. And here's what I think is ultimately going to happen, like with the alignment. I think you're going to put your most athletic offensive and defensive linemen on the field, on the line. Okay. I think that linebackers and corners and safeties will also round out those lines, because you're going to need speed to be able to chase dudes down. This is the bad news for the Browns. Remember how Dustin Hopkins got hurt?
Yeah.
He got hurt trying to chase down a big kickoff return against the Houston Texans. And that became a bit of a problem. So, like, your kickers, you're literally your last line of defense. But, like, I'm still trying to figure out the rule. Andrew Berry's talking about they're watching XFL film. Kevin Stefanski was on our station on with the morning show last Friday, and he talked about how Bubba Ventrone is out in the Casey Coleman Fieldhouse. They've got a helmet on, and he and some of the assistants are out there running through these new kickoff scenarios, because no one, and this isn't just a Browns thing, like no one in the NFL really knows what this thing's going to look like. And I think it's going to bring back the explosive return. I think we're going to have a ton of kickoff returns for touchdowns this year. I think that's like,
I'm not crazy in my thoughts here. I think we're going to see more offense on these. Yeah.
I always make the joke. Phil Dawson, Josh Cribbs, and Joe Thomas all played in the wrong era of Browns football, right? They are on the expansion era Mount Rushmore of, Browns fan favorites. And, like, imagine the damage Josh Cribbs would be able to do with this new kickoff rule, which, by the way, I had to pull it up because, like, so there's like three different things that the NFL football operations people put, like, on their website. Okay. They did one whole section just on the alignment itself, and it is 2, 4, 6, 8. It has 9 bullet points just on the alignment alone. Okay. The next section is about the landing zone, and that's, I guess, the area between the team's goal line and its own 20-yard line. And there they have 2, 4, 6 bullet points there, just about the landing zone. And then they have a boatload, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 miscellaneous bullet points. By the way, in the miscellaneous bullet points that I did not realize this, no fair catch is allowed. You have to return it now. So you're going to have 2 returners there. It's similar to the XFL where the lines, you're lined up across from each other. It's Stefanski did mention this too. Hang time no longer matters with kickoffs, right?
Right.
And you're not going to see guys kicking it through the uprights anymore. So this, I think, is a smart move by the NFL, Andy, because it became like the extra point was. The extra point was basically fait accompli, right? It was a 20-yard kick. They always went in. Whereas now, since in the last couple of years they moved it back, I forget what the percentages are, but there's been a lot of misses on the PATs.
Oh, we've been the beneficiary, or we've been the
we've been on both ends of
opposite. Yeah, we've been
on both ends of that stick, where the Browns are concerned. But like, it's added another dimension to the game, and the kickoff became another one of those ceremonial plays. Okay, touchdown, PAT, commercial break, kickoff. It's a touchback. Go to commercial. There was really nothing to watch for those 30 seconds in between those commercial breaks. And if there's one thing the NFL is very cognizant of, it's maximizing their on-camera time
right.
when it comes to the action on the field. Because when they condense, I do the when I rewatch games, I do the NFL Plus thing where I can watch the condensed version of games. And a 3
almost
hour,
like a half hour, right?
It's like, 40, 45 minutes for the entire game. To have it shot. So in the 3 hours, you really only have 40, 45 minutes of actual action on the field. So I like the thought process of the NFL here, trying to create something that's different, that's interesting. It's going to be an adjustment. I can't wait to see it on the practice field. And one thing I'm going to be real interested in is how much the Browns actually allow us to film it. Like during the off-season program, they're typically relaxed a lot. It's usually when they get in training camp, they get real particular about the stuff that gets shot and gets put on social media or broadcast on local TV and whatnot. I'm going to be real curious to see what they allow us to show fans. I know I will, be fighting to be able to put stuff out there so that fans can be educated about what things are going to look like. But there's also the element and why the Browns do prohibit, have some prohibitions on practice film. It's because it's competitive advantage. And
right.
And Bubba Ventrone and Kevin Stefanski and the coaching staff, they're going to be working on things within this new rule, right? And all these bullet points in these sections of this rule, right? That they can find things that they can exploit and take advantage of. And obviously
that's what I'm waiting for. There are 2 things that I'm interested in. One, much like in baseball now, you have to declare when the runner's at third if you're getting the windup or the stretch. And then 2, you have to declare in the fourth quarter if you want to do an onside kick.
Yeah.
So that you go back to the more traditional. I also wonder if, now obviously not this year, but next year if they'll tweak the punt and what they're going to do with a punt somewhere down the road.
Well, I don't know what there is to do to the punt because you're getting punt returns still. Now,
right.
Unfortunately for the Browns, they've not gotten much out of the punt return game. They've not gotten a lot of explosiveness. But when you look around the league, because I remember asking Bubba Ventrone last season about that. Hey, it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of action on the punt returns these days.
Right.
What do you think about that? And he's like, I don't know what game you're watching because I'm seeing stuff every week. And I'm like, okay, I'm an idiot. I apparently have missed something. But I don't know what they would tweak with the punt. It is a dangerous play because the guy's looking straight up, in the
right,
and he's got everyone running at him. But I do feel like at some point you have to recognize you play a contact sport.
For sure.
Injury is an unfortunate. It's an unfortunate part of the game, but it happens. And yes, they're adding new helmets this year. I don't know if you saw that. Like there's new brands of helmets that are going to be available for players and to choose. Again, I'm all for player safety. I really am.
Yeah.
You never want to see guys get hurt, but like at some point you got to understand it's part of the game. Like this hip drop tackle thing, I still don't get. I've watched.
It looks to me like a tackle. I mean,
yeah, like okay, so if the guy gets by you and you lunge, and the only thing you're able to grab is by the waist, right, or by the hips, and if you bring him down, you're going to get penalized for that. So you're supposed to just let. I just feel like they're getting a little carried away with taking defense out of the game, and I realize that. Like chicks dig the long ball. Remember that campaign Major League Baseball did?
Sure do.
Fans love scoring. Fans love touchdowns. But at the same time, there is a defense on the field too. You got to let them do their jobs. And I don't find like, because I've asked players, like, can you explain to me what a hip drop tackle is? And they're like, yeah, no. We're watching film right now, trying to figure it out ourselves so that we know like what to avoid doing. And the coaches are already in the classrooms going through the tape and trying to pull out the points of emphasis. But yeah, I've watched a lot of clips and like it's hard to discern in the course of play what a hip drop tackle is. And I think that's why the bulk of the enforcement you're going to see this season, Andy, is going to come through fines after the games. Players will get fined during the week for those particular plays, more so than the officials throwing flags, because that's the other.
It's gonna be hard. Yeah, they're gonna slow down the game, and you got all kinds of issues with that. Yeah, I agree.
Watch the officials throwing flags for 3 hours, right?
Not me, brother. Not me. All right, we ran out of time to do a little bit of draft, but we've got another show coming up before the draft, so I'm looking forward to talking to you about that. Coming up, he is Daryl Ryder. I'm Andy Baskin. Thanks for checking us out. Again, we have a major announcement coming up in a few weeks. We'll just put it that way. Right, Daryl?
Yeah. As soon as we get the thumbs up from the people in charge.
That'll work. All right. Thanks for watching. It's always game day in Cleveland.